Ethan hadn't expected to inherit the farm. His father passed suddenly, leaving behind cracked fences, rusted tools, and a scattered herd of goats that seemed more like ghosts than livestock. But Ethan stayed. He rebuilt the barn with his own hands, cleared the overgrown pasture, and by the second year, the land began to respond. The farm sat on the edge of a quiet neighborhood where homes had grown newer, cleaner, and colder. Most of the neighbors kept to themselves, except one. Karen moved into the cream-colored house just beyond the tree line. She arrived with a U-Haul, a matching patio set, and a fiancé who worked out of town more than he was home. She was loud, visible, always managing something even when there was nothing to manage. It didn't take long for her to notice the scent of goats drifting on the wind, or the roosters, or the tractors, or Ethan. That at first, it started with the glances. Ethan would be hauling feed, and she'd be standing at the corner of her fence with arms crossed, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. No wave, no smile, just watching. Then came the letters. Folded sheets taped to his mailbox. Unregistered livestock, one said. Improper fencing. Animal noise ordinance. None of them were signed, and none had anything official attached to them. Ethan didn't respond. He knew where the property lines were drawn, and he knew his farm wasn't within HOA boundaries. But Karen didn't single quotes One afternoon, as Ethan fixed a cracked irrigation pipe near the edge of the property, Karen leaned over her own fence and called out, "Is that water legal?" she asked, tone sharp. Ethan didn't look up. "It's rainwater runoff." "Well, I hope you have a permit," she muttered, before disappearing behind her hedge wall, like a disappearing act. Things escalated slowly like a rising pressure under the soil. One morning, the latch on the goat pen had been twisted open. Half the animals had wandered near the edge of the road, spooked and crying. Ethan found the lock bent backward but not broken, as if someone had used a tool to snap it halfway through and changed their mind. The animals were fine. The gate, not so much. That same week, he found a trail of footprints near his tool shed. They were small, not quite adult-sized, but deeper than a teenager's stride. What made him pause wasn't the print itself, was the direction. The steps led in, but there were none leading out, so he bought trail cameras. 4 of them, motion-triggered and low-light capable. He placed one behind the barn, another near the south gate, and 2 overlooking the animal pens. He didn't mention them to anyone. Not even the local feed store guys. Not online. Not to the sheriff. And that was the night. Diesel's routine changed. Diesel was Ethan's last link to his father, an old shepherd, mixed with intelligent eyes and the patience of a monk. During the day, he slept on the porch. At night, he had free roam of the land. He was quiet, powerful, and fast when he had to be. The kind of dog that didn't bark unless it meant something. Karen didn't know about Diesel. Not yet. Ethan didn't lock everything anymore. Just enough to bait a habit. A bent lock here. A cracked hinge there. One gate left open just enough to invite curiosity. He was giving whoever it was a chance, a choice, and when they took it, he'd be watching to see what the trail cameras caught next. Keep watching, because the real trespass wasn't the one caught on camera. It was what Karen left behind. 3 days passed before anything unusual happened. Ethan woke early, as always, just before the sun broke over the hills. He made coffee, fed Diesel, and walked the fence line. Nothing seemed off until he reached the barn. Pinned to the door with a rusted tack was a piece of paper. It flapped gently in the wind. Plain white. Standard printer ink. No seal, no county logo. The message read, "Animal violation notice. You are hereby warned to remove unregistered livestock within 72 hours. No signature. No letterhead. No authority." Ethan stood still, scanning the surroundings. His eyes moved toward the woods bordering Karen's backyard. Her house sat in silence, curtains drawn, wind chimes motionless. He removed the paper, folded it once, and slid it into his back pocket. He didn't crumple it. He didn't toss it aside. He simply walked back into the barn and went about his work like nothing had changed. But that night, the cameras told a different story. At 1:46 a.m., motion was triggered near the south gate. A lone figure approached, hooded, slow-moving flashlight, turned off. Only the dim glow of their phone lit their path. The person crept along the goat pen fence, paused at the latch, then moved to the side barn door. They didn't try to enter, just stood there, watching, like they were waiting for something, or someone. Then Diesel's silhouette appeared. The figure froze. Diesel didn't bark. He stepped out slowly from behind the shed, posture low, gaze locked. The camera's infrared caught every second. The intruder backed up, nearly tripping on a rake. Diesel advanced 3 paces, then stopped. He didn't growl. He didn't charge. He simply held his ground. That was all it took. The figure turned and disappeared into the night without a sound. Ethan reviewed the footage the next morning. He rewound it, paused it, zoomed in. The shape was too vague to identify, clearly, but one frame caught the wind lifting the edge of the figure's hoodie. There was something underneath. A familiar shape, sunglasses, oversized, hanging from the neck by a pink cord. Karen. Ethan didn't call the police. Not yet. No harm had been done. Just more warnings, more signs. But he knew now, this wasn't curiosity. This was intent, so he changed his approach. That evening, he repositioned the camera closer to the barn. He replaced the side latch with a decoy lock, one that appeared secure but opened with a light tug. Inside, he left the feed room door ajar. A trail of stacked hay bales led toward the rear stall, the darkest corner of the barn. And that's where Diesel would be waiting. He didn't instruct the dog. He didn't need to. Diesel had lived through storms, chased off coyotes, and once saved Ethan's leg from a rattlesnake bite. He understood the world through silence. That night, Ethan left the lights off earlier than usual. He didn't lock the gate. He simply waited, and so did Diesel. By midnight, the wind picked up. Clouds rolled over the moon. The barn creaked softly, but the animals stayed quiet, almost too quiet. At 2:13 a.m., a motion alert pinged on Ethan's phone. The side gate had opened again. Keep watching, because this time, Karen crossed a line she couldn't walk back over. And what Diesel did next wasn't what anyone expected. The sound was faint, just a subtle metallic rattle carried on the wind, but Ethan heard it from inside his cabin. He muted the television, reached for his phone, and opened the camera feed. The south gate was wide open. Diesel had already left the porch. Ethan didn't move. He sat still, watching the screen. A figure was backlit in the grainy footage, hooded again. But moving faster this time, almost confident Karen had returned. This time, she wasn't just walking the perimeter. She headed straight toward the animal pens, pausing only to take her phone from her coat. The faint blue light reflected off her glasses. She panned slowly across the goats, then crouched beside a feed barrel, filming the ground. Her mouth moved as if narrating, though the camera's mic didn't capture sound from that distance. Then, she moved toward the barn. Her steps were more aggressive now, less hesitant than before. She reached the side door, tugged the decoy lock, and it clicked open with almost no resistance. Ethan tapped the screen and zoomed in. She stepped inside, and the door swung shut behind her. The camera in the barn lit up in low light. Dust particles floated like ghosts through the air. Karen moved slowly, eyes wide, scanning the stalls and empty corners. She didn't know where the animals were. She didn't know the feed room door was rigged to creak just enough to sound like a whisper in the dark. She definitely didn't know Diesel was behind the bales, still as stone. She moved toward the rear of the barn, filming a stack of unlabeled containers. Feed mix. Nothing illegal, nothing harmful, but without context they might look suspicious. She whispered something into her phone, and stepped over a bucket to get a better angle. That's when Diesel moved. Not a growl, not a bark. Just the soft pad of paws over hay. She heard him at the same time the camera picked up his shadow. Karen froze. Diesel stood between her and the door. His ears were forward, tail stiff, body low, not attacking, not retreating. Just watching. Karen raised her flashlight slowly. Her hand trembled. "Nice dog," she said, her voice barely audible. Diesel didn't move. Her light flickered as her battery died. She fumbled her phone, dropped it. The barn went dark. Then the loft lights turned on. Ethan stood above her, hand still on the switch. His silhouette loomed against the rafters. Calm and deliberate. "I'd stay still if I were you," he said. Karen spun around, heart pounding, but didn't dare step forward. Diesel didn't growl, but the message was clear. Ethan descended the ladder slowly, each step thudding in rhythm with her panic. "I've got 3 nights of footage," he said, reaching down to pick up her phone. "And this one's the best angle yet." Karen started to speak, but no words came, her face flushed with panic and fury all at once. "You climbed a locked gate," he added. "Cut through a latch, entered a sealed structure. You've got trespassing, property damage, and maybe a little theft if I decide to go looking through your pockets." She looked down. Her jacket was stuffed bolt cutters, phone charger, a USB stick. I was investigating, she said at last. Good, Ethan replied. So was I. The barn fell silent except for the soft breath of Diesel, who hadn't moved a muscle. Karen glanced at the open stall door behind her. There was no path out that didn't pass the dog, and Ethan didn't offer her one dot. Keep watching because the sheriff's arrival wasn't the turning point. It was what Karen said to him that revealed why she'd really come in the first place. Ethan didn't say another word. He stood near the barn ladder, watching Karen the way one watches a fire, unpredictable, flickering, full of smoke, but not yet burned out. Karen kept her back pressed to the stall door, her chest rising and falling like she was out of air. Diesel sat just a few feet away, his body coiled but motionless, eyes never leaving her. I didn't mean anything, she finally whispered, voice cracking. I just thought you were hiding something. With the goats, the noise, and the ... chemicals. Ethan tilted his head. Curious. Chemicals. She pointed toward the feed containers. They're unmarked. They're oats, he replied. Want a bite? Karen flinched. Footsteps sounded outside. Gravel crunching under. Slow tires. Ethan didn't check his phone. He knew who it was. He'd made the call 20 minutes ago after the cameras lit up. A knock sounded on the barn door. Sheriff's office. Ethan whistled once. Diesel rose and calmly padded back into the shadows of the barn. Karen inched toward the door, only to stop short as Ethan reached it first. He opened it slowly, revealing Deputy Marshall, built like a tree trunk, and not one for small talk. His flashlight swept the interior, pausing on Karen. She'd break in. He asked. Ethan nodded once. Gate lock was cut. Barn was opened. This is her third night on my land. Marsh didn't look surprised. Got it on camera. 4 angles. Karen stepped forward, trying to regain her footing. This is a misunderstanding. I thought he was storing. Look, I was worried about animal mistreatment. I have the right to investigate if I believe. No, ma'am, Marsh interrupted. You don't. Not at 4 a.m., not with bolt cutters in your jacket. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. Ethan handed over her dropped phone. You might want to check her recent footage. Marsh took it, along with the bundle in her jacket. He opened the side pocket. Flashlight, bolt cutters, gloves, and a tiny bottle of marking chalk. Planning on tagging something? He asked. Karen's hands trembled. I was going to report violations. By sneaking in at night and filming a working farm without permission. He turned to Ethan. Do you want to press charges? Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at Karen. She was unraveling rage, bleeding into humiliation, fear, into bitterness. And still, she hadn't asked why he'd stayed so calm through all of it. No, Ethan said finally. Not yet. Marsh raised an eyebrow. You sure? Ethan nodded. Let her go for now. But I want her banned from this property. I want a statement on record. And if she steps foot past that gate again, you'll get every minute of video and won't ask for leniency. Karen looked stunned. You're letting me go? She asked. Ethan gave a small shrug. You came here looking for something. You got it. Marsh led her out without cuffs, but didn't speak another word to her. She walked like someone trying to pretend it hadn't happened, chin high, hands clenched, eyes cold. Ethan watched from the barn, Diesel beside him. When the cruiser pulled away, Ethan turned off the light and locked the door. But the story wasn't over. Because the next morning, the HOA president came knocking holding a formal complaint that had been filed. Hours before the break, dash in. Stick around because what Karen left behind that night exposed a much bigger plan. And Ethan was already 3 steps ahead of it. By morning, the farm was quiet again. The animals had calmed. Diesel slept by the porch, ears twitching occasionally at the sound of distant birds. Ethan stood at the edge of the driveway, arms folded, as the silver Lexus from the HOA rolled to a stop beside the cattle gate. It was Roger Briggs, the HOA president, too polished for a country road. Roger stepped out in a blazer far too clean for the dust beneath his feet. He didn't bother with greetings. I've received a serious complaint, Ethan. Ethan didn't speak. Roger cleared his throat and continued. Filed last night, time-stamped around 2 in the morning. Accusations of animal neglect, storage, of banned pesticides, and operation of an unlicensed breeding facility. Ethan raised a brow. You mean the goats? Roger pulled out a clipboard and flipped through a few stapled pages. I don't have jurisdiction here officially, but the board was copied, so were city inspectors. Ethan didn't flinch. You got all that. Before the sun came up, Roger hesitated. It was submitted electronically. I see, Ethan said. So either Karen is psychic, or she knew exactly what she planned to accuse me of before she trespassed. Roger looked uncomfortable. Look, I'm not taking sides here, but you know Karen's got connections in the neighborhood. The board listens to her. Not after today, they won't. Roger squinted. What do you mean? Ethan turned and walked toward the barn. Come with me. Roger followed, dust rising behind his polished shoes. Inside the barn, Ethan handed him a USB stick. Footage from last night, audio 2. Roger took it hesitantly. And this proves that the complaint was a setup, Ethan said. She tried to create the evidence before filing, but she forgot the cameras had audio. She literally said, this should be enough to shut him down. Roger's face dropped. You recorded her saying that? Ethan nodded. She said it twice. Roger exhaled sharply. I need to bring this to the board. Do that, Ethan replied. And tell them if another complaint reaches me before I get a written apology, I'll have no choice but to post this entire incident online. Every minute of it. I'll let the internet decide what they think about HOA board members harassing a farmer outside their jurisdiction. Roger looked paler than before. No need, for that we'll take care of it quietly. Ethan said nothing more. Roger got back into his car and drove away with far less confidence than he'd arrived with. Later that day, Diesel led Ethan to something behind the barn, a crumpled notepad, half buried in the straw. It was Karen's. The pages were full of notes, times Ethan fed the animals, names of livestock feed, even a drawing of the gates latch. But one sentence stood out, circled in red ink. Get him cited first. Then pressure the sale. Ethan stood silently for a long time, the wind tugging at the edges of the paper. She wasn't just angry, she was trying to push him off the land. And suddenly, her midnight break-ins made more sense. She wasn't just nosy, she was trying to manufacture failure. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the property had been in Ethan's family since the 1800s. And that beneath the farmhouse was a safe. Inside that safe was a deed, and a very old agreement, one that was going to change everything. Stick with this, because the next document Karen discovers won't just backfire. It'll expose who really owns the entire hillside, and who doesn't belong at all. 3 days passed without a word. No knocks on the gate. No fake notices. No midnight motion alerts. Even Diesel seemed less restless, but Ethan knew quiet didn't mean peace. Not out here. Not with someone like Karen. On the 4th morning, as he was patching a broken fence post near the north line, the sheriff's cruiser rolled up again. This time, it wasn't Deputy Marsh. Sheriff Carden stepped out himself. Ethan stood slowly, wiping dust from his gloves. Morning, the sheriff said, tipping his hat. Didn't think this was your kind of call. Ethan replied. Carden nodded toward the house. Mind if we sit a minute? Inside the kitchen. The sheriff placed a folder on the table and opened it. Karen's filed a harassment complaint, he said flatly. Claims you released your dog on her. Says she feared for her life inside the barn. Ethan didn't respond. Right away, he reached into a drawer and placed a small, labeled hard drive on the table. That's the night she broke in. Start to finish, Carden leaned back. I figured. That's why I came myself. We've known each other a long time. Ethan, you've never been one to cause trouble. She caused plenty, Ethan said. But that's not what worries me. Carden waited. Ethan slid Karen's notepad across the table, the one Diesel had found. She wasn't just trying to stir noise complaints, she was building a file. Trying to paint the farm as unsafe, unfit, a risk to the neighborhood. Carden flipped through the pages, jaw tightening. What's this mean? Pressure the sale. Ethan tapped the table once. She knew I wasn't part of the HOA, but someone's been feeding her false claims about property boundaries, and that's where it gets interesting. He stood, crossed the room, and opened a small wall safe behind an old photo frame. Inside, beneath insurance papers and family records, he pulled out a yellowed parchment. Carden raised an eyebrow as Ethan unfolded it carefully. This, Ethan said, is the original land agreement from 1891, signed by the county registrar and my great-grandfather. It includes an easement clause. My family doesn't just own this land, they own everything, from the creek to the old mill road, including the ridge Karen's house sits on. Carden blinked. You're saying her lot is on your family's land? No. I'm saying her fence is. Carden leaned forward, studying the old document. Has this ever been challenged? No one cared until now, Ethan said. The Line runs right through what Karen calls her private flower garden. But if she wants to argue land use, we can have that conversation. The sheriff sat back in his chair, clearly digesting more than expected. Do you want to press charges now? He asked. Ethan shook his head. Not yet, let her stew, let her feel safe. People like Karen don't stop because they're warned, they stop because they slip. Cardin stood, taking the folder and the hard drive. I'll make sure this gets logged the right way. And I'll let her know any more movement on your property, and we're done talking. After he left, Ethan returned to the barn. Diesel trailed behind him, tail low, nose twitching. He checked the cameras, nothing new. But he could feel it, the quiet before something snapped. Not just Karen's temper, but her plan, her urgency, and he was right. Because that night, someone left a white envelope at his front gate. No stamp, no return address, just a single line typed in bold. Remove all livestock or face legal consequences, final warning. Stay tuned because Ethan's next move doesn't involve the sheriff, the HOA, or any more warnings. It involves a courtroom. And a land survey that's going to make Karen wish she never picked this fight. The envelope sat unopened on Ethan's kitchen table for most of the morning. He didn't need to read it. The message was clear. But he wasn't angry. He was calculating. By noon. He made 2 phone calls, one to a county land assessor and the other to a lawyer he hadn't spoken to in over a year. The assessor arrived the following morning in a dust-covered truck and began walking the lines with an old steel measuring chain. It didn't take long. What she calls her garden, the assessor said, motioning toward the ridge. That's about 6 feet into your deeded parcel. And that decorative fence she put up last spring. It's sunk about 8 inches into your soil. Ethan nodded. That's what I thought. And, if she filed any legal threats involving that space, the assessor continued, you've got grounds to reverse it entirely. Might even get a countersuit if she tried to alter the boundary. Good, Ethan replied. Because that's exactly what I need. By the time the paperwork was filed, the HOA board had already started to fracture. Ethan hadn't needed to go public. He didn't have to post the footage online. He simply sent copies to the individual board members with a brief note. This is your complaint, author. Make your own judgment. Some ignored it, but 3 replied the same day. Within a week, Karen's standing on the board was under review. Her fiancé, who had returned from a work trip to find a formal police citation on their kitchen counter, began to ask questions, uncomfortable ones. And then came the moment Ethan had waited for. It was a Sunday evening. The sky glowed soft and orange, and Diesel lay peacefully under the porch. Karen's fiancé, tired, red-eyed, walked the path from their house to Ethan's gate, hands in his pockets. I'm not here to argue, he said quietly. Ethan simply stood, watching. I didn't know how far she'd gone. I knew she was angry about the noise, but breaking in, setting you up for a sale. He paused. She told me you were squatting. Ethan blinked once. Squatting. Yeah, the man said, embarrassed. Said your grandfather's ownership expired after some zoning change. That you didn't have water rights. I guess she thought. If she made you look unstable. Ethan said nothing. Just let the silence carry the weight of it. She's moving out, the man said after a long moment. She doesn't know yet, but I'm done. He left quietly, and Ethan returned to the porch, Diesel rising to follow. 3 days later, Karen received a letter from Ethan's attorney. It wasn't a threat. It was a formal notice. Remove all structures encroaching upon parcel 1 to B. Within 30 days, or face civil action. Karen was seen the next morning tearing out her garden fence by hand. That same week, a copy of the historic land agreement appeared in the HOAS meeting minutes attached anonymously, though everyone knew where it came from. Ethan didn't attend the meeting, but the fallout was clear. 2 board members resigned. One called for new elections. Karen tried to deny everything, blamed miscommunication, said she acted on behalf of others, claimed Ethan manipulated the narrative. But the recordings, the cameras, the land survey, and even her own notepad said otherwise. Ethan never needed to raise his voice. He just let the facts do. What fences were made to Dumark, what belonged to him, and what didn't. The final part is next, and when Karen leaves for good, she won't just lose the neighborhood. She'll find out the one detail Ethan never said out loud, the reason her efforts never had a chance to begin with. Karen's SUV pulled out of the neighborhood on a cloudy Wednesday morning, its back window plastered with dust and duct-taped cardboard covering a cracked taillight. The U-Haul was overpacked, squeaking underweight. It wasn't rated for She didn't say goodbye, no one waved. The house she left behind stood stripped of its garden fence, porch furniture, and all signs of curated perfection. The real estate sign out front had already been updated with a new name. An agent who didn't live in the neighborhood and wouldn't ask questions. Ethan watched from the porch. Diesel lay beside him, calm as ever, his head resting on Ethan's boot. The air smelled like cut hay and distant rain, and for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel like it was hiding something. It felt like it had returned. But even with Karen gone, something still lingered. The note, not the fake violations or the complaints. The final note, the one she'd left at the gate. Remove all livestock or face legal consequences. Final warning. Ethan had read it only once, but he'd kept it. Folded, untouched, tucked in a drawer beside his father's old field maps and the signed land agreement. Because there was something about it, something familiar. It matched the font and formatting of the HOA's official template. And that meant someone else had helped her write it. Karen may have pulled the strings, but she hadn't been alone. Ethan didn't need to chase that ghost though. He'd done what he always did: watch, wait, record, document, and when the new HOA elections came, he didn't campaign. He didn't even vote. But someone submitted his name as a write-in. He won by a landslide. The next meeting was small. Only a dozen neighbors showed up. But when Ethan arrived, Diesel walking behind him like a shadow, the room went quiet. He sat at the table, said nothing for the first 10 minutes. Then he placed a single copy of the historic land deed on the center of the table. No more confusion, he said. The farm stays. The line is drawn, and anyone who tries to move it again will find. I don't need fences to hold my ground. Not a threat. Just truth. Later that week, the county installed a new boundary marker near the ridge just beyond, where Karen's flower garden used to be. A thin brass disc set in concrete, stamped with the survey date and Ethan's parcel number. A line made permanent. Neighbors began to stop by more often. Some brought cookies. Some offered to help with fencing. One man even apologized for not speaking up sooner. Ethan accepted every word with a nod and a quiet grace that said more than speeches ever could. As for Diesel, he got his own upgrade, a heated doghouse near the barn with motion-sensing lights, his name carved into a cedar plaque above the door. Visitors noticed the sign near the gate now, too. It wasn't aggressive. Just simple. Private property. No trespassing. We record everything. The cameras remained. So did the silence. But for the first time in a long while, that silence felt earned and not like a storm was coming, but like the land itself had taken a breath. Karen had tried to win with noise. Ethan had answered with stillness. And it turned out, the stillness was louder. If you've ever held your ground, not with shouts, but with facts, not with fists, but with patience, then you know exactly how this ends. Because some people fight back. And some people just wait for the others to bury themselves.